Fundamental structures. A knot is an intentional complication in cordage which may be practical or decorative, or both. Practical knots are classified by function, including hitches, bends, loop knots, and splices. Practical knots are classified by function, including hitches, bends, loop knots, and splices. A hitch fastens a rope to another object. A bend fastens two ends of a rope to each another. A loop knot is any knot creating a loop. A splice denotes any multi-strand knot, including bends and loops. A knot may also refer, in the strictest sense, to a stopper or knob at the end of a rope to keep that end from slipping through a grommet or eye. Standing end. The standing end, or standing part, of a rope is the part that is not active in knot tying. Working end. The working end, or working part, of a rope is the part active in knot tying. Tail end. The last portion or lowest part of something. In reference to knots, loop may refer to one of the fundamental structures used to tie knots. Specifically, it is a U-form narrower than a bight. A type of knot used to create a closed circle in a line. A loop is one of the fundamental structures used to tie knots. It is a full circle formed by passing the working end of a rope over itself. When the legs of a closed loop are crossed to form a loop, the rope has taken a turn. A. Open loop. B. Closed loop. C. Turn. D. Round turn. E. Two round turn. Crossing point, the place where ropes cross in the making of a loop. Elbow, two or more loops in close proximity to each other. Bend. A bend is used to tie two ropes together, as in the sheet bend. Technically, even the reef knot is a bend. Bight. A semicircle of rope where the rope does not cross itself, also the part of the rope between the standing part and the end that can be used in tying the knot. Bight can have two meanings. The main part of the rope from the running end to the standing end, also known as standing part, where the rope is bent back to form a loop. An open curve in a line. A whipping knot or whipping is a binding of marline twine or whipcord around the end of a rope to prevent its natural tendency to fray. The bowline knot is one of the most used loop knots. This variant is most used in the world, probably due to its simplicity, security, and its relationship with the sheet bend. Clove hitch. You can use this knot to attach a rope to a pole. This knot provides a quick and secure result. It rarely jams, and can in fact suffer from the hitch unrolling under tension if the pole can turn, often used to start and finish lashings. The figure 8 is useful to temporarily stop the ends of a rope fraying, before it is whipped. The fisherman's knot is used to tie two ropes of equal thickness together. Reef knot or square knot. An excellent general-purpose knot for tying two pieces of string or twine together. The reef knot is possibly the most commonly used knot for the job, and is easy to learn. However, it cannot be overly stressed that the reef knot is not a long-term or secure knot, and it should only be used to finish parcels or bindings. Taut line hitch or rolling hitch, Magner's hitch, Magnus hitch. This hitch is used to attach one rope to a second, in such a manner that the first rope can be easily slid along the second. Sheet bend, flag bend, common bend. The sheet bend is commonly used to tie two ropes of unequal thickness together. The thicker rope of the two is used to form a bight, and the thinner rope is passed up through the bight, around the back of the bight, and then tucked under itself. This is the simplest knot of all. It is commonly used to temporarily stop the end of a fraying rope. The overhand knot is commonly tied in a bight formed at the end of a rope, forming the overhand loop. The thumb knot jams easily, so it is far better to use a figure-8 knot to stop the end of a fraying rope. Timber hitch. Used to attach a rope to a log, or where security is not an issue. This knot tightens under strain, but comes undone extremely easily when the rope is slack. Butterfly noose. When you need a loop in the middle of a rope that will not slip, you will find this knot useful. You can create multiple hand or foot holds along a long rope, or even place loops in your fishing line. This knot will never jam no matter what direction the load comes from. A monkey's fist or monkey paw is a type of knot, so named because it looks somewhat like a small bunched fist or paw. It is tied at the end of a rope to serve as a weight, making it easier to throw, and also as an ornamental knot. Rope splicing in ropework is the forming of a semi-permanent joint between two ropes or two parts of the same rope by partly untwisting and then interweaving their strands. Splices can be used to form a stopper at the end of a line, to form a loop or an eye in a rope, or for joining two ropes together. Back splice, or end splice, a splice where the strands of the end of the rope are spliced directly back into the end without forming a loop. It is used to finish off the end of the rope to keep it from fraying. The end of the rope with the splice is about twice the thickness of the rest of the rope. With nylon and other plastic materials, the back splice is often no longer used. The rope strands are simply fused together with heat to prevent fraying. Short splice. In making a short splice, the ends of the ropes are unlaid for a short distance and brought together, the strands interlacing. The eye splice is a method of creating a permanent loop, an eye, in the end of a rope by means of rope splicing. Flake. A flake refers to any number of turns in a coiled rope. Likewise, to flake a rope means to coil it. Flaking or faking also means to lay a rope on a surface ready to use or to run out quickly without tangles. Lashing, ropework. A lashing is an arrangement of rope used to secure two or more items together in a rigid manner. Common uses include the joining of scaffolding poles and the securing of sailing masts. The square lashing, diagonal lashing, and shear lashing are well-known lashings used to bind poles perpendicularly, diagonally, and in parallel, respectively. Bitter end. Hard eye, thimble splice. Figure-8 fake. Long fake. Flemishing. Dipping the eye. By dipping the eye when docking means that whenever any vessel wants to leave, they can remove their eye of rope without having to mess about with the other vessel's rope. Bitter end, the end of the line that you work with in tying knots. Also known as running end. As a rope worker's term, bitter end refers to the end of a rope that is tied off. In British nautical usage, the bitter end is the ship end of the anchor cable, secured by the anchor bitts and the bitter pin in the cable locker under the forecastle. At anchor, the more anchor line that is paid out, the better the anchors hold. In a storm, if the anchor drags, ships will pay out more and more anchor line until they reach the bitter end. At this point, they can only hope the anchor holds, hence the expression hanging on to the bitter end. A bitt is a metal block with a crosspin for tying lines to, also found on piers. Also, the working end.